Channel 79, you can get rolling. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 1st, 2019 meeting of the Darien Sewer Commission, regular meeting. It is 4:30. We are in room 206 of Town Hall. We are calling the meeting to order at 4:32 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes of September 3rd.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, my comments are in red, of course.
Is that for you?
Chairman Cameron.
All of us, yeah. 523 Post Road.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I handed out something, it's an email from Ms. Cameron. I incorporated her comments. The stuff in red is the things that she said that I revised.
Okay.
So if you are so inclined to accept Ms. Cameron's and my changes, you should at least know what they are. There they are.
I got a few more.
You got some more? Okay, let me.
All right, on page 2 of 6, about the 4th line up, options that are available, and then said?
Options are available. Okay, take out the.
No, well, or.
I took out the,
Did you?
my nits. I also took out has in the second sentence.
Okay, I thought it could be then,
Are available.
if one wanted to, but you can take out,
And said the consensus
Yeah,
from
that's
past
fine.
meetings. Yeah.
okay.
And then in the second sentence, Mr. Gentile pointed out that the water use decreased. It has
Where's
decreased.
that, Mr.
I didn't
Gentile?
think it was
Yep,
correct.
yep, sure.
But I have
Gentile.
these nits to hand out in.
Okay. Did you get the nit that they spelled Aquarian wrong?
What's wrong with that?
Bottom of the first page.
What's wrong with has?
It's O-N. Very bottom, very last, page 1 of 6.
Oh, page 1. Oh, wait, I'm on page.
Very bottom, right in the middle.
Aquarian, you're right. O-N.
Where?
You know
Very,
what? I'll
very,
hand you mine if you want. I'll correct them and then you can have them.
Okay.
Okay.
very bottom of page 6, Aquarion. It's not an.
Oh, yeah, spelled wrong.
And also in that paragraph, about the increase, it was not 3%, it was 1.98.
User fee increase was 1.98.
Question on agenda item 4, which is page 3 of 6 in the minutes. The sewer connection to
Yes.
pro rata share. Soon after the meeting, you sent an email saying, I found it,
Yes.
the matter is closed. And we informed them of that back, whatever it was, 12, 15 years ago. This was after the meeting, but it is very germane to the record on this topic. Is it appropriate to add an after-meeting note if we all agree to it?
I thought the same thing. That would make it very clear in the future.
Yeah.
Like a
By the
PS.
way, this
Yeah.
was resolved.
It was always my impression that the minutes should only contain whatever was said here, but I could write in parentheses, editor's note.
Something like that?
Something
Would
like
that
that.
be okay?
Yes.
Post-meeting note,
Post-meeting note.
I just wanted.
Correspondence was found and distributed by email confirming Mr. Ostefine's recollection that the developer fees were paid in full.
You're gonna have to slow down for the new secretary. He doesn't write that fast.
Installed my email confirming.
Mr. Ostefine's
Mr. Osterfine.
recommendation, recollections
Recollection.
that the developer's fees were paid in full. Is that the right way to say it?
Sure. We're paid in full.
I was looking
Got it.
at that, and I was just wondering if there was no mention of any record, any, or just of record?
Where are we now?
In red, it says sewer extension that connected to the mixter sewer. There was no mention of record. But, you know,
that
I
something
thought
that-
maybe any,
of any record.
Might
of
be
payment.
okay, but
Yeah.
then
It's just a
again,
grammar thing.
you
That's the
get
thing
down to the next line, you got
Oh, did you get it?
think, K.
Is that something that you already corrected?
G you took out, right? Okay.
I think I might have corrected that.
I think, it sounds like something
Yeah.
that Ms. Cameron might have corrected.
If you look on this sheet
Yeah,
that you
okay.
passed
There
out.
there was no mention or record, yep, you got
Yeah,
it.
okay.
It-
All
or.
right.
Or,
instead of
is
a-
the word should be
Yes,
or.
I like
All right,
that.
then
That's-
down in, where we approved it,
Motion.
developers agreement has been paid in full, or if effect is null, is it, if in effect?
The unfound developers agreement.
Change
has been
if to
paid in
in.
full,
In effect, if in
Or,
effect.
or is in effect null and void, I think is what I said, or is,
Yeah.
or is in
Yeah.
effect,
All right, then we. ought to
no
say-
is null and void.
Yeah,
I agree. That
Yeah.
sounds better.
okay,
Okay,
so whatever,
is-
on that one.
Is in effect and is null and void?
No, I'll read this sentence.
Okay.
Has been paid in full, or is in effect null and void.
Okay, so take off the is. Got it. Got it.
Anything else?
Well, yeah,
Okay, keep
down
going.
here in the, where I have moved to approve the sewer connection.
Yes.
Right, down, third line, developers agreement has been paid in full, or, and you had, or if effect is null and void.
Yeah, no, we just covered that, or
Yeah, you
is
just
in
did
effect
that.
null and
Yeah,
void. Yeah, we're good
right,
on that.
Okay,
Yep.
right.
Any others?
I just little teeny things that I'm gonna just hand in.
Okay, please hand in your little teeny things. I accept your representation that they are little teeny things.
It's like a comma and something has an E and extra S.
Okay, thank you.
Spelling errors.
Bob, anything else?
No.
Susan, anything else?
Nope.
Peter, anything else?
Just let me check this.
Okay,
Some-
take your time.
You took care of that understating, right? It
On
should
page
be
5.
understanding, was it? On page 6,
No.
second line. It is his understating the town owns.
Ah, that's a good one.
Understand.
All right,
Understand,
Darren,
right?
Where are
page
we?
6 of 6,
Yep,
6 of 6.
top of the page, second line.
yep.
It is his understanding.
Oh, instead of understating.
Yes.
Right.
Ah, okay.
It's amazing how these things
There
fly
we go.
by.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have caught that one.
I read,
All right.
Have a motion.
I'll
Make
a
'em-
mo- Go ahead.
Go ahead. You started.
Yeah. Make a motion, we accept the minutes of the meeting of last month, which,
Do I have a
with the
second?
corrections.
With
I'll
the corrections. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Item number 2, 3 on the agenda, determination of pro rata share for Ann O'Brien, 64 Old Kings Highway South. Discussion and action.
Okay,
Is Miss O'Brien in the room?
she is.
Okay,
Ms. O'Brien handed me a letter just as I walked in today.
Okay.
I'll give it to you.
okay.
All right. And I'm not entirely sure what it says, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Let's see, if you look on page, well, item number 3, there is an attachment. It's an email exchange between Patty Gao and myself. I underlined one sentence in particular. The town owns the sewer and the commission can charge and retain the fees. That was the question from the sewer commission during the last meeting. We weren't sure about that, or the commission wanted to be reassured, and Patty was nice enough to dig out the settlement agreement. I did not want to put this in the agenda package. I have it here if somebody wants to review it, but I think that sentence says it all.
All right, should I read the letter that we received, so everybody has that? I'm just looking at one more thing. Dated October 1st, 2019, to the Darien Sewer Commission from Ann C. O'Brien and Richard D. O'Brien. Darien Sewer Commission. We have lived in Darien 46 years and raised 3 of our 5 children here. We have lived in our current home at 64 Old Kings Highway South for 45 years. We now find living in our historic old house, circa 1715, has become a drain financially. We are in our mid and late 80s, and retirement money is vanishing quickly. Unfortunately, we still have a mortgage on our home. Plumbing is the latest problem now, and it is necessary to connect our home to the sewer line. I have attached the estimate from Shady Plumbing and Heating for the plumbing work necessary to connect to the sewer line. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. Sincerely, the attachment is from Shady Plumbing to Ms. O'Brien, with an estimate of $15,500 for furnishing and installing the new sewer line to connect to the street. Alrighty, so that's in the record.
So at issue is, what if any fees would be charged to Ms. O'Brien for connection to the former Westmere sewers now owned and maintained by the town of Darien?
And the developer's agreement doesn't give us any clarity. Well, we basically, the developer's at it.
It does.
Yes.
We own it.
Yeah.
So the developer's agreement is no longer an issue.
Yep.
And you can
So-
charge whatever you want.
You can,
Well, within, I mean.
you can, up
Yes,
to the maximum benefit appraisal,
Right.
which hasn't been done.
Yeah.
That's the law, that's how it works.
And have we charged others to connect to this sewer?
No,
What do we normally charge to
and it's
connect
not
to a
many.
sewer?
What we normally charge is a pro rata share or with a ceiling of the apparent benefit. In this particular case, we're pretty certain we're never going to be made whole.
Because of basically the settlement with
Too few people available
Oh,
to
yeah.
connect,
to
too much of
recover
a
costs.
cost paid to settle the issue.
But we knew that when we settled, right?
You did. Well, we knew as soon as we went to court that
Well, I
it would
mean,
probably
what-
end up this way.
But the settlement, we knew that. So
Yeah,
we are not gonna try and recapture all the money.
I think it's
I
impossible.
mean, that's my view.
I think not only would we not try, it's
Yeah.
impossible.
Right.
So this is a unique situation,
Yes.
which could result in a unique solution. Because on the other side of it, and to a point for later discussion today, when you don't have situations like these where there was a recent extension or improvement of the sewer, we don't have a minimum connection fee articulated in our regulations.
That is correct.
Uh-huh.
In the past, the commission has decided to charge some people based on the formula that was in place at the time.
So if there was a formula that was in the developer's agreement that said if anyone connects, you have to pay X share, we have tended to use that as our guide for connection fees when they occur.
Yes, and in addition, there's also been circumstances for town projects where there was no lot available and there was all of a sudden a lot. And why should they be allowed to hook up for free when all of their neighbors had to pay for the sewer?
Yeah.
So it was, I'll just use for rough numbers, it might be a project from the early 70s, and they were charged, the commission decided to charge $3,000 or $4,000 because that's what everybody else paid at that time. In other cases, the commission has decided the project has been paid off. There's no reason for us to try and recoup any money.
But here we're out $175,000 and someone that connects to it is receiving a portion of the benefit of that 175,000.
That's correct.
So it is not unreasonable to consider a connection fee in that situation.
If the commission had not gone through the legal procedure, jumped through all those hurdles, et cetera, you could rest assured that the developer would be doing everything he could to get the maximum
You're right. So if it was still
pro rata
owned-
share.
Well, yeah, okay. If the developer's agreement was still in effect, said developer would likely be looking for a connection fee to help defer the cost of.
Yes.
And we would be in this position trying to determine what the fair share would be.
Yes.
Is it possible to take a connection fee like this and apply it to the sewer user fees over a period of time like we do with new construction projects?
I've never seen it done. That doesn't mean it can't be done. The only time a sewer assessment, call it what you will, assessment, connection
Prorated
fee,
over
pro
time.
rata share, where someone is paying for their share of a sewer system that was installed in front of their property. The only time I've seen that paid over time is when the town does it and they assess somebody. And I've never seen, I don't believe there's a mechanism available where sewer user fees and assessments could be, or payments for a pro rata share could be commingled. One of them goes onto the land records and follows the land, where the other one is specifically related to
And it's
how much sewer.
usually based on a bonded amount, which
Yeah.
runs the
Right.
same amount of time.
I don't know how that would work. I don't
Yeah.
see an
So that's
easy
a-
way.
Probably
I
more
don't see a
complicated
practical
process
way.
than.
Yeah, I think so.
So the decisions before us are one, to require a connection fee or not. And if we require a connection fee, how best to determine the fair share of that connection fee, which we may or may not be able to do tonight. And, you know,
That's correct. I would not want to guess. I would be
Yeah.
guessing. If I said $35,000 is fair because Clocks Lane was 35,000 or 32,000 or whatever. I don't know, are we comparing apples to apples? It
yeah, or
doesn't
is that
seem
apples
like
and
it.
oranges? That is an assessment, that is over time, that was bonded, you know,
Yeah.
versus a straight connection fee, which it is interesting.
Now, when you're saying that we're never gonna recoup the 175,000, how many possible connections are there? I mean, all of Brushy Hill is not possible, or it already
Well,
has
see,
sewer?
No, see, Brushy Hill was a town project.
Oh, it's already done,
It's done.
okay.
And part of Andrews Drive was a part of Brushy Hill. And that connected into the Westmere former sewer. We offered them a check, I believe it was $25,000 to connect, and they returned it, and of course pursued us in court. So that's the story, that's how it went. How many houses are left? I can only think of one, aside from Mrs. O'Brien's house, and that's kitty corner across the street on the corner of Andrews. There's other houses on Andrews, well, I should back up. There was a Kelly sewer.
Okay.
Kelly put in a sewer for his house, the house that's very close to the snowplows almost hit it.
Yep.
Okay, when he put that sewer in, there was a number of people who connected to that sewer. Some of them were on Andrews Drive and got easements and went across the property of other properties to get to the Kelly sewer. So, and then Westmere came along, and when they developed it, part of the Westmere project was to replace the Kelly sewer because there were some deficiencies. The sewer didn't have proper slope, so as part of the sewer commission approving Westmere to put the sewer in, they had to replace the whole Kelly sewer. Well, you can't really assess somebody for a sewer if they were already connected to a sewer. So those people who were connected to the Kelly sewer were never gonna pay Westmere.
Because they
That
were
was-
already
they were
connected,
already there.
even though there was infrastructure.
And in addition
So-
to that, Brushy Hill and
Yeah.
Andrews Drive was,
So how many houses were in the Brushy Hill / Andrews Drive expansion?
I'll guess 25, 30-ish.
And at the
That would be
time,
high.
our position when we went to Westmere with the $25,000 check was, we're asking for one connection on behalf of the town, regardless of the fact that it's 25 people hooking up.
Yes.
We think the fair share for that one connection is 25,000.
Not only did we think it was fair, in my personal opinion, that's exactly what was written in the developer's agreement.
A connection is 25,000.
Yes. In my personal opinion. Obviously, somebody disagreed with me.
Now, I could, depending on which perspective I looked at this, right? I could see that as saying, well, if 25 or 30 people were gonna hook up for a total cost of 25,000, basically the cost that they're paying for their ability to hook that up through that one connection is $1,000 each, or something thereabouts, depending on whose side you were on looking at this.
If you're looking for a way to justify whatever it is you're doing, you can. There's a way for you to justify whatever number you come up with. I would suggest that the argument of each property being owing, for example, Westmere $25,000, that's exactly what they wanted, and it was not in accordance with developers agreement, not consistent with any past practice, and unfair, because if you go by that rationale, and this argument was vetted quite a bit, then ought not the people at Nearwater be getting something for the sewer that they put in, which more than 2/3 of the town is paying for, running through. So it becomes, the people at the end of the pipe would end up paying nothing, because they'd eventually get money from everybody upstream who connected, sort of like a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, but a lot of this stuff was done by the municipality in a big chunk, right? And then, in the last, say, 30 or 40 years, we've been dealing with these kind of relatively minor extensions in encapsulated projects, and maybe it's a project that the town did, and maybe it's a project that the developer did. But I hear you, and when you take that argument to its infinite conclusion. Does anybody have more questions for staff? I am going to offer the property owner time to speak if they desire it.
I just had one. Okay, so you had 25 houses, just for a number, Brushy Hill, Andrews Drive. Did they pay the?
What was their assessment?
Yes. What was their
35?
assessment?
But as a part of
30?
that 35, was any payment to Westmere or for that connection
No.
fee included?
That was the piping in the road, I would assume.
Yeah,
And
but,
the repairing of the road.
okay, I guess I'll answer it two ways. One, any connection fee is a bona fide cost
Yep.
associated with that project.
So if we had paid a connection fee, we could have included it into the bonded cost.
And we would have,
Assessment.
and we should have. I can't say I'm 100% certain, because I don't remember when everything blew up. I don't remember when we pulled the plug and they returned the check. I'm positive that we gave them a check, and I'm positive they gave the check back. They did not accept it. Nevertheless, that ought to be.
And then Andrews was done and assessed before we settled with Westmere.
Well, Andrews was, there was two parts of Andrews. One part was part of the Brushy Hill project, because it went beyond the Westmere sewer. And part of Andrews Drive was the Westmere sewer, because they actually had a couple lots that accessed Andrews Drive. So the town connected on Andrews Drive where Westmere left off on Andrews Drive. Of course, their sewer was more expensive because they put a pump station in for basically 7 lots. And that pump station per decree of the sewer commission at the time was, it has to be sized to handle this much additional flow, this much of additional service area, which included Brushy Hill and the rest of Andrews Drive.
Just for, refresh my memory of why we did this, why we took over.
Why we took over the sewer?
Yeah.
Commissioner named Jay Fisher, you remember? He was vocal in saying that the sewer commission will not take over the sewer in the developers agreement until the last house within the development connects. And his thinking was, let's let the sewer sit there, and if it has problems, let those problems expose themselves so that we are not taking over a sewer that has issues. Let the developer be responsible until that last house connects. Once the legal fight ensued, it took years. The last house in that development still has not connected. But as part of the settlement agreement, we took over the sewer.
But why did we take it over when we did?
We were told to, and it made sense because
I think I think I was on the commission when we settled Westmere.
settled.
And, we had so many problems.
Yes.
With the landowner and the developer. And it was a restricted and obstructed situation. And
It made sense.
this was the best way forward, that's my.
For example, just a couple of examples. They would send us electric bills. They would send us propane bills for the generator. They had a landscaper going over there and mowing the lawn, and they would send us bills for that. And the thinking was,
Easement wasn't done.
how do we
Yeah.
have a parting of the ways and separate the cost, who's gonna pay for what, and
And quite frankly, in my mind, it's, in general, it is appropriate for the sewer commission to have control of these sewers over a private entity, because, we have the staff and know-how to take care of it.
But what I'm saying is, we agreed to $175,000.
To resolve
To resolve.
a mess.
Resolve that mess.
yeah.
But, so, if that's so, I'm just trying to think of the equities here. I mean, I'm not sure that, it happened. I'm not sure that we should be, thinking about connection fees with any regard to that amount of money.
Because
that
part
was
of it was a resolution of a legal dispute,
Right, and.
and not just straight construction costs
Yeah,
on a
and
sewer extension.
I mean, I may be wrong here, but from what I hear, this sounds like, I don't know, a hardship, maybe,
Mhm.
these people have?
Okay.
Are there any other questions for staff?
Well, I mean, and I would assume this is the case. They were offered, when Westmere put it in, they were offered to connect? They were,
Who was on?
this property was offered the option to connect, or no?
I don't know that we go around and advertise.
Okay.
We don't
All right.
knock on doors and say, by the way, there's a sewer out front if you want to connect. It's just, we don't offer that, but people come to us and say, can I connect to the sewer, as Ms. O'Brien is now?
Yeah, I guess I don't know the answer to that question. I wasn't around when it was created, but
We-
there was no requirement there wouldn't have been a requirement for the developer to offer connections to those that were adjacent.
Okay.
I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm unaware of the town ever petitioning or calling or contacting anybody in any way to tell them that a developer's put a sewer in and it's now available to you. It usually happens, a realtor is moving the property and that question comes up and they ask us and we share whatever information we have.
All right. Before we deliberate any further, is there any additional information the property owner would like to provide on the record? Or does the letter cover it?
I think I said.
Sorry.
everything in your-
Would
I
you
have
come
to
up
ask you to
here?
come to the mic, I apologize.
I think
Yeah,
she's
come
saying
up to
that
the
everything
dais.
is
Or unless you're saying that you've said everything you need to say.
We promise we don't bite.
Thank you.
I think I said as much as I could in that letter.
Okay,
You know, financially, we're just, you know, going by the skin of our feet now.
understood.
And between the plumbers things and the plumber giving us an estimate, you know, we're sitting not comfortably.
Understood.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
She just reminded me, there is no lateral that we're aware of. That's something that the commission was interested in the past
On
in
the
similar
Mansfield Avenue
situations.
one, yeah.
So,
The lateral wasn't provided as a part of an extension.
No, it's, luckily, it's on her side of the road in the grass, so you won't have to go out into
It's
the
the
road.
best location possible. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
All right, thank you very much.
So the lateral is part of the 15,500 that Shady's charging us?
Yes.
Okay. I have to
you
say,
can-
just listening, absent a connection fee in the regulations, if you felt that you must do a fee, I would count up the houses that connected on Brushy Hill and divide it, that number by, was it 35,000?
No.
There's a couple different
Darren said
ways,
that
yeah.
each house on Brushy Hill was assessed
No,
$35,000.
I think
Yeah.
if I were to.
I'm going back to Craig's.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
We paid we were willing to pay one connection fee of 25,000 so that 30 houses could connect.
Oh, okay.
That was something that the town thought was fair at the time.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
I would make it accurate. I would actually count up the houses.
Yeah.
Not guess.
Yeah,
That is one option.
Yeah.
And that if you had to charge something.
yeah, if we
I like
felt a connection fee was justified, that is one way to get to a connection fee. The other, I mean, the other way I was playing with was you take the value of that piece of extension and divide, which would be 175 unless proven otherwise, and divide that by everybody that benefits from that extension. So it would be the O'Neill extension, it would be the Westmere, it would be Andrews, it would be Brushy, and it would be this house, and maybe the next house, and you divide that, right? So yours is gonna come up with a number something like 1,000 or less. Mine might come up with a number something like 4,000 or 5,000. Both, I think, are able to be calculated in an equitable fashion. But there is also the point of view that if we don't have it clearly enunciated in our regs, we're picking and choosing how to apply a standard.
Right.
Peter, any further thoughts? Bob, any further thoughts?
No.
Okay, I guess I'll entertain a motion. First question is, do we charge a connection fee or not?
We did not charge it for Mansfield, but that was entirely paid for?
Yeah, that developer's agreement existed, people that connected to it paid for it until it was done, developer's agreement was over, and the next person came in and connected for nothing.
Well, I'll start the ball rolling by saying that I make a motion, we do not charge a connection fee in this case.
Do I have a second on Peter's motion?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? The motion on the table is to not charge a connection fee for 64 Old Kings Highway South to connect to the sewers. Hearing no further discussion, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor of not charging a connection fee, please raise your hand. Got 2. All those opposed to not charging a connection fee,
2-2.
please raise your hand. I gotta raise my hand, I hear it's a point, and I'm not gonna abstain.
Are you abstaining?
I think it is reasonable to charge something, so I'm gonna go 2-2.
Okay.
2-2. So what does that mean?
You needed Reese here.
We
Doesn't
need-
pass.
We
That's
need
what
to
you
punt
mean,
it
yeah.
until Reese
Doesn't
comes back?
pass.
That's
So
a
the-
tie.
Yeah, motion does not carry.
Tie.
All right. Do we have
Uh,
another motion? All right, you good?
So.
All right, so I will move that we count up the houses on Brushy Hill
Yep,
and Andrews, that we were looking to connect for $25,000, even though that was denied, but that was the figure the town thought it was worth.
yep.
And we charged them that.
A pro rata
Pro-rata
share
share
of that 25,000 based on the
25,000.
number of houses benefiting from that currently plus this one,
Correct.
Okay, I second that motion.
okay? So we don't have an actual figure tonight, but we've given you a means by which to calculate it,
Okay, can you say that
which
again?
would be the houses connected through the Westmere sewer by virtue of the Brushy Hill extension plus the Andrews extension. Plus this one further connection.
Anybody who goes to the Westmere Sewer,
Yes.
okay.
And we, so we take 25,000, which was the figure to be confirmed that the town thought was fair at the time for all of those homes, divided by the number of homes. And you're gonna get to a number somewhere between $800 and $1,000. And we charge that as a connection fee because we thought it was fair at the time.
Okay. So,
Okay.
What-
if your motion passes, the motion will be for us to figure it out and
Yes.
not come back to the commission.
If you can, yeah, no, I trust you to make
Okay.
that calculation.
Okay, thank you.
And if there's any question over the calculation that you make, you certainly can bring it back, but.
I'll
if you
inform
can
you,
work
I just
things out,
didn't want,
that's fine.
I just need to know if we're gonna hold them up or not.
Yep,
for
I
another
wouldn't hold
month.
them up.
Okay.
So Susan's
So
motion
I
is
made
on
the
the table. Do
motion. I need a second.
we have a second?
I second.
Oh, you
Okay.
seconded?
Any further discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Okay,
All right, so the 25,000 was an agreement that the town went into with the developer, knowing that in the end, they were gonna take over the sewer system.
no.
Well, they always take over
Oh,
sewer
yeah,
system.
I guess so, you're right, yeah, I guess so.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I don't think it's an appropriate base number,
okay,
because there's other costs associated with the, you know, that whole thought process. I mean, you know that you're gonna take it over at the end. So you cutting a deal with the developer then, just, it doesn't,
well, the 25,000 was written into the developer's agreement before we settled, right? And before there was a legal dispute. So it said basically, subsequent connections to this extension have to pay a $25,000 connection fee. And so we said, sounds great, we will pay a $25,000 connection fee and hook in 25 people.
Just
Yeah,
my
please go.
point of interest, for clarity, it didn't, the developer's agreement didn't say 25,000.
Oh, it didn't,
It said a connection fee.
a connection,
We determined,
that was the value
Yeah.
of the connection fee. Okay, it didn't say anything. We said a fee of $25,000 makes sense to connect to your sewer and plumb 25 or 30 people through it.
and they gave us the check back.
And they gave us the check back and said, go pound sand. And then we fought about it in court for a few years and settled for 175 and took over everything.
So there wasn't really ever a 25,000, we're picking that out of,
Well-
we're picking that out of air because it really was never.
Well, but the town of Darien at the time thought that was a fair value for the connection of 25 to 30 homes.
So not picked out of air. It was, I'm sure there was a
Well,
lot of thought
but
process.
I'm sure the cost for Westmere was far in excess of $175,000.
I have no idea.
That's why they litigated.
$750,000.
Well, that's what they said.
that's what they said.
Okay,
They submitted an affidavit of costs, which we objected to, and I never agreed to, but that was their number.
Okay.
We paid $175 for it, plus our attorney's fees, which were probably more than that.
Probably more than 175,000. Okay.
All right, so we have a motion on the table.
Sue was first.
Any further discussion, and a second on the motion? And the
Oh,
motion,
Peter.
in summary,
Thank you.
is to provide, is to charge a connection fee in an amount equal to $25,000 divided by the number of homes benefiting from the Westmere sewer. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of charging said connection fee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed to charging said connection fee?
Aye.
Nay. 3-1. Passed. Do you guys understand what's going on? In summary, staff has to do some calculations. It sounds like the connection fee is going to be somewhere between $800 and $1,000 pending those calculations.
It's gonna be a good deal. Can I have your name for the record?
Oh, Laura O'Brien, my daughter.
Laura O'Brien. Thank you. I think you can go now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you, Nancy.
Hey, look at this. How timely.
I didn't put it in there. Thank you.
Item number 4, discussion, I don't think action really, because the only action would be to come up with something for the next meeting.
Yeah, set a public hearing.
So it's really, and then set it up, but I wouldn't, I'm
Yeah.
not ready tonight to do that. I think we would
No.
discuss, ask for some information, and then probably discuss it some more. So, discuss a potential code change for a sewer connection fee. I'm also gonna open 5 kind of at the same time, which is a potential code change to apply a minimum sewer user fee to individual apartments or condominium living units versus a single tap user fee. So those are both on the table. Do you want to tell us about your research, gentlemen?
We just Googled some stuff. But it's.
No, it was useful.
It's accurate.
It's accurate, and you can see the stuff is attached. We've attached the stuff that we found, so you can
All
actually see
different.
what we found.
Yeah.
A
Yes, sir.
little side note to make the commission feel good. Richfield is arguing about a 60% increase in their user fees. 60%.
Wow.
So I hope you guys feel good about your 8. It's not bad.
They have sewers?
Yeah, they
No,
They have a few.
no, not at all. They're just.
Yeah, they just charge
That's
the
right.
fee.
That's right, the 3 people who are connected have to cover it all.
Yeah.
Well, they have to have it for the condominiums that they've put in, the affordable housing project.
Yeah, no, they have some.
They have some.
Yeah,
Yes.
can't do affordable
They
housing.
have their own wastewater plant. And interestingly, even though they're up in Richfield,
So-
it goes right into North River, so they're still important.
I think I just want to kind of set some parameters on the discussion and say one thing in the interest of full disclosure. So, one, I've come to agree with Bob that we should charge some connection fee. And certainly it could help us in situations like the Mansfield Avenue or the Old Kings Highway where we have a minimum and everybody pays the minimum. And if we have a bunch of gray areas, we can just go back to the regs and say, this is what the charge is. So having something makes sense and helps us from picking and choosing answers when really it should be written down and people should know what to expect. So that's one. 2, I want to recognize that 98% of the town is developed, and so let's not spend an inordinate amount of time trying to make perfection out of a mass of numbers when it's not going to come up a whole lot. It's not going to be a big revenue driver. 3rd, I will disclose that I am a principal of Redness and Mead. Redness and Mead has clients in town in the one case in Norotan Heights, that they have their zoning approvals, but they have had preliminary meetings with the sewer commission to approve their zoning plans, but haven't technically filed the permit to connect, right? And this would, if it went into action and affected them, could probably affect them a lot, between the connection fee and a sewer user fee for individual apartments. So I wanted to disclose that. I want to disclose that we also work for Parklands, have a current contract with LCB, the purveyor there. And so a sewer user fee for individual apartments, if applied to assisted living units, could affect that client. I have no financial interest in either of these entities, but I think if it came time for a vote, I would probably recuse myself from a vote.
You don't feel you could hear it in a fair and impartial manner because of your connections? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying I would likely recuse myself from the vote or abstain from the vote.
Okay.
At the very least.
Good to know.
I would likely do that. But I think it's, I'm separated from any financial interest, and I think it's an important question for all property owners in the entire town that I'm willing to take part in the discussion. So I wanted to say all that out loud. So I did.
Okay.
Okay.
But you're still gonna participate in the discussion?
Discussion, yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Yep.
All right, I'll start. Basically, you have a system that's been paid for by the users. Someone wants to join. You could call it a club, you could call it whatever. There should be a joining fee or a connection fee. Not saying it should be exorbitant, but you should be chipping in. It should be more than just what you use, because there's a system in place already that's been paid for by the users. So I believe that a connection fee is appropriate. I could go with the one, I think it was for the 5/8 meter, it was $1,800. I would think that would be appropriate. I don't think it's exorbitant. I don't think it would,
Is 5/8 still a typical size?
That was gonna be my next question.
No.
That was an
Excuse me?
interesting.
for a water
For a
meter.
single-family residential,
3/4.
you usually use 3/4. Yeah.
Oh,
Which is
oh,
the
the
same
size of
cost.
the site.
Same cost.
Okay, it was just to pick a number out of,
It's the same,
Yep.
3/4 is the same, too, same price.
okay.
Okay.
But just picking a number, I don't believe that would be an unrealistic or unfair or unequitable number at all. I think the.
You don't have Stanford in here. know.
I do.
Oh, you do?
I think the dwelling unit is an
$3,600.
entire,
600's at the top.
while they're related, I really think it's an entirely different discussion.
Greenwich does not
Okay.
have connection?
Yeah, they have connection fees. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I was never involved in
Oh,
that
so you
end of
Stanford
it.
3,600.
It's
Now,
at
how is
Greenwich.
that 3,600 in Stanford?
I believe they have them, don't they?
I couldn't find them. I
Excuse me?
couldn't find New Canaan or Greenwich, but it doesn't mean that they aren't there. In the past, our
Well, if you read
attorney,
the article that Jeanette Brown was part of,
Yeah.
they give you the logic.
Where is that?
Next to the reverse page of this page, which was interesting.
I mean, part of the argument, that if I remember right, is that as each person connects, they're using part of the remaining capacity of the system.
I can tell you Norwalk's philosophy is your philosophy. We have a club, it has ongoing capital costs, and when we allow a connection, it's going to put an additional burden on the treatment plant, and the treatment plant has infrastructure that's constantly in need of updating, is constantly having the limits on their effluent ratcheted down. So there's future costs, and I would point the commission to page 5 of 10 of where you're talking about the greater New Haven area. And I like the sentence, it says, Connecticut DEP methods of capital cost recovery. Although we don't have a treatment plant, we do have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be maintained and improved, and other things that we have to do to satisfy regulatory agencies.
Yeah, I highlighted that sentence. Fees were based on a methodology where new customers are charged for existing available system capacity based upon the actual estimated value of the capacity. So that sort of brings it back to a real, not just pick a number.
Couple things is, so I believe the Stamford sewer connection fee is not based on tap size, but it's based on number of dwelling units. So if you have 100 dwelling units in an apartment building, they're gonna charge you $360,000.
Yeah.
That's my recollection.
That's if each one has just 2 bathrooms.
Yes, which maybe they only have one. Oh, 2 or less.
I think, yeah, 2 or less.
The dwelling unit.
3, it's,
So 3,600 is an interesting number because it's by dwelling unit, not meter size. So
3.5 bedrooms.
meter size is a different way to address that, right? The bigger your building is, the more water it's gonna require. The larger the tap size, the larger the
So if you
fee
had a bathroom, you could
for
charge.
the tap size.
And the greater your
Potential use.
instantaneous
Use.
potential.
In potential use.
Your instantaneous potential use is so that you could, you know, if you have a bigger line, you could cause issues if all of a sudden everyone flushed at the same time.
Now, another thing is, if we have large, so right now, we say to anyone connecting, if it's a larger project, prove to us that you're not gonna cause a problem to our system. And by the way, if you're gonna cause a problem to our system, you're paying for every lick and dime of it, to make sure you're not gonna have a problem on our system at the end of the day. If you charge a large tap fee, let's say it's 100 apartments and you're gonna charge a $360,000 tap fee, you're opening yourself up for the question potentially of, well, what's the tap fee for? You guys maintain your system. You guys fix it. I'm paying you $360,000. So that would have to be considered and made clear.
Why
been that
are
way.
they allowed to connect without having to,
Well, today they aren't.
no, but you're.
But the
what
question
you're
is,
saying-
are you, by charging a large tap fee for the availability of a working system, are you, in some way, you know, effectively charging them for capacity and then charging them to fix some capacity problem?
If they're causing the capacity problem, why shouldn't they have to pay for it?
Go ahead.
That's a different argument.
Okay.
Capacity is really our problem. What about wearing out the pipes and the pumps and the cost of the pumps that you folks have invested in? I'll use Avalon if it'll, maybe it'll interest you. When they built Avalon, it was a dirt pit, right? And now there's, I think, 170 something units there. We looked at our Brookside station and found out that we had 2 pumps. I don't know why one was 3 and the other one was 5 horsepower, but one of them didn't have capacity. So they wrote us a check for 10 or 15 grand to upgrade our pump station. And then they sent their laborers over there and dug trenches for us for the new conduits that had to be run. That was not a connection fee. That was just so they could do what they wanted to do, because there wasn't enough capacity in our system, in our pump station.
Yeah, and similar from Kensington.
Yes,
They
that's
up-
another.
They upgraded pumps.
Thank you, that's another
A, they
perfect
built all
example.
their sewers. B, they upgraded the pump station. C, they upgraded the force main
And the generator.
and the generator.
You're absolutely
And
right.
They paid for 100% of it. And had they paid well, they probably have 4 bedrooms in each of those. So had they paid a $360,000 connection fee, would we still be saying you have to pay for 100% of every ripple effect you have on this system plus your connection fee?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
My answer is yes.
Yeah.
By Bob's Hill's argument, the connection fee is your cost of admission to the club. And if there's a
Because
capacity.
there's a lot of
issue-
infrastructure downstream of whatever that ripple effect is that you're still benefiting from.
Yes.
And there's future work that's gonna need to be done. And I like this article here from, or this piece from New Haven, because it hits the existing and what future uses or future capital work you may be planning to do, or they specifically actually mentioned I&I.
That's a great point. No sewer extension that I've ever known has anticipated that. It's never been built, a built-in cost.
I think to Bob's point also, they have to be reasonable.
Connection fees were established.
Yeah, I'm not,
Were established consistent with Connecticut DEP methods of capital cost recovery on WPCA projects. Is that applicable to our discussion? Is there a DEP guidance document that we should be consistent with when establishing these fees?
I don't believe Google found that one.
Just
yet,
1997,
but
pretty
Google
old.
will look again
Yes, okay.
and see.
And so this list is GNHW, where's that?
Greater New Haven.
That's New Haven.
Water Authority.
Okay, so that's the New Haven one, which is the 1860. Okay. The other thing to consider is on these large projects, you've got one big tap going into a building, but in that building you might have residential apartments above and several separate commercial tenants below. And the likely case is things are sub-metered out. But say you have one Aquarian water meter going in, and one Aquarian water meter reading going in, and one tap size going in, and any number of users taking advantage of that tap size. So basing these things back to one tab certainly saves a headache of how do you count a bunch of different things. Any thoughts on that?
So instead of basing it on units, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, you're basing it on the water meter size. I mean,
Well,
that's
yeah.
Those are two
Yeah.
different solutions.
So in essence, you're saying get your money up front.
Well,
As opposed to the minimum for each
if we
quote
think
unquote
these
living
related-
unit.
The other thing that you had brought up, which I thought was compelling, was the idea that when you're under construction, you're not connected, you're not getting charged. You then get your CO, and maybe you got your CO halfway through the year in January, right? And because January's halfway through our year, right?
Yes, July.
In this world.
Not
in
most
this
people's,
world.
yeah, in this room. So, one, looking backwards, A, you didn't pay a fee for the year you were under construction. B, there were no water meter records for that to be able to base this year's user fee on. And then when we finally send you a bill for next year, it's only on half the year. And so there's you're kind of getting away without paying for your usage for like a year and a half in there, let's say. And is that fair, right? And so if you had a connection fee, that covered that, right? It smooths over that idea that basically when you get up and running, you're not even generating your water for us to charge you on.
Yes.
So it sounds like the consensus of the group is that we should be charging a connection fee.
I think that's just gonna keep our decisions more
Absolutely.
consistent and not have
And so
it
the
be-
question is, then getting to what is a fair method to use. And so there is the idea of trying to calculate what's in the building versus just charging it on the tap size. And do we have a consensus for direction there?
I think the tap size makes more sense than trying to figure out everything in a building. You
Yeah.
go kind of crazy doing that.
Yeah. Bob?
Yeah, it keeps it pretty much cut and dry.
And we assume the engineer who designed the building.
Didn't oversize the tap, which happens a lot, by the way. Well, there is an issue that comes
Or
up, and
undersized.
I run into this in
Either
Norwalk,
way.
that because of your fire sprinkler system, your tap size might be an 8-inch. But your domestic use is only 3 or 4-inch, but it comes off after the tap. So in those cases, Norwalk says, have your MEP write us a letter and tell us in that letter what the domestic tap size is and what the requirement is. And they go by
Right.
the MEP's letter, not by the actual Aquarian or First District tap.
I'm not used to that. I'm not familiar with that in acronym. What's MEP?
Mechanical electrical plumbing engineer.
Okay.
It's 3 different people. Got to pay for all of them.
And that's very reasonable.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that, but that is very reasonable. There's no reason you should be paying for fire suppression,
Yeah.
the capability of the fire suppression system.
Yeah. So that's something to consider and have in such an ordinance.
Right.
So there seems to be consensus over a tap size based system with concession.
This would be per tap. Let's
Yeah.
say you
Domestic tap
have a
size.
large building that happens to have
Multiple
2 meter
taps,
or
yep.
multiple reader.
Any
taps.
source of domestic coming in, you charge each one.
Right.
So that we have to get, so yes, it makes sense to charge tap fee, yes, it makes sense to base it on tap size with concessions for backing out fire suppression water, or only counting domestic water. And the next question is, and I don't think we're ready to talk about it or answer it, which is, how do you get to a fair and equitable number, and what is that fair and equitable number? I think, more research needs to be done on what more towns are doing, and B, I think we should probably see if the DEP has guidance documents, or even call the DEP and see if they have any guidance for doing this.
I can't speak for town council, but I would just mention that in situations like fog regulations and stuff like that, they seem to lean towards whatever Stanford's doing, we should at least do that.
I'll do something similar. Yeah, well, they don't have a tap size based system.
They don't. I'll just throw that out there for you.
Yep. They have they have a sewer connection fee of $3,600. I think you have to look deeper at how they apply that to commercial square footage. I think there is a formula that they have.
I don't know, actually, you can see, we found only a newspaper article,
Yeah.
and we called them to make sure that it was still accurate, because I think it was from 2010.
Yeah.
And they said, oh yeah, we're still doing it that way, but I didn't find any
I think they're in. Okay, well, I can
Gotta
do
go
some
to
research too.
regulations.
regs.
But we should probably keep in our minds as we go through this process exactly what they are doing, just to make a considered decision of whether or not we should do exactly what they're doing, or do what we think is fair for our user makeup. And at some point, we should make it, well, we've got probably another meeting or two to discuss where we're headed with this. We probably then have to schedule a public hearing and then make a decision. So even at speed, we're probably 4 months away from this being enacted, at least. So we will have to make a decision at that time when it becomes effective relative to all of these large developments that are anticipating budgets that don't currently have tap fees. So that's as much as I'll say about that. Any further discussion on number 4 or requests for information from staff for the next meeting before we move to number 5?
I just want to make sure, you want us to find out more information on what other towns are doing?
Yes.
Okay.
And then
And
check with the
then-
DEP
yeah.
to see if they have any guidance on
The
how.
DEP, capital cost recovery,
Yeah, do they have any guidance on how these charges should be
those two
set?
things.
And then we should probably drill down on Stanford a little bit more to understand exactly how that rate is applied. Yeah.
Only one more suggestion, because I do get asked as we approach our public hearing for rate increases from the first selectman, to keep her apprised of any additional increase in fees or
Okay.
charges.
So
Her
we
being
can
the-
let her know immediately that we are starting discussions that considering charging a connection fee to the sewers. We don't know what that fee is, or how it's gonna be done, how it's gonna be applied, but we are starting that discussion, and consensus of the group is that some kind of fee makes sense.
You're okay with that? The commissioner's okay with that? Me letting her know?
Yeah, yeah, I think she
I
should.
mean, she
know.
could be watching the meeting right
She
now.
is- Isn't she a member pro tem, or whatever they
I
call
think
it? Yeah,
probably.
yeah.
What is she, Darren? She's a W what?
She's the leader of the WPCA.
The leader.
Okay.
She deserves to know.
Yeah, I do think we need, obviously we'll have a public hearing, we need to, coming up with the fair amount, I think is what I'm focused on. You know, these numbers seem like they're all over the page when you look at them. You know, we go from $500 for a dwelling to $1,800 to $3,200 to $3,600, just in the smattering of towns we've looked at. And coming up with what's fair, I think, is certainly an important piece of this.
Well, fair contains a lot of,
Yes, fair to the people that are been paying for
Lot
it,
of
now the new guy's coming
information.
along, and,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay.
So, moving on from number 4 to number 5, similar discussion, potential code change for sewer user fees on an individual basis to be applied to per dwelling.
Well, that's
Currently, I'm getting tired,
in the
losing
same-
my words.
That'd be the same kind of genre.
Yeah, so this is interesting, I think, because, take a similar building where you have multiple users and multiple types of users. So you might have one tap going in. Right now, we would charge based on the flow through that tap. And they send a charge to the building, and they would figure out how to sub-meter it. And if we went to a minimum fee by user of that building, right? Yes, it's easy to define what a dwelling unit is in that building, but it gets harder to define than multiple commercial users within that building. And then how do you keep breaking it up?
And this is an annual fee, correct?
And this is an annual fee.
It's not a one-time
Yeah.
fee.
And the idea is that, or maybe Bob, you want to enunciate it, but the idea is that,
You're connected, and you could not use it for 6 months and, use it tomorrow. So you are paying for the availability of the sewer system
yeah,
to that unit. And because you only have one water meter in there, the one I keep coming back to is there is a 16-unit building in town that has one water meter. So they can conceivably pay, this year it's 237 something for a minimum, and yet have 16 units connected, if
Well-
their flow is low enough.
Yes, if their flow is
Right,
low
if their
enough.
flow's low enough,
Yeah.
but isn't that how we base our sewer fees, is on your water
Yes.
flow?
Yes, but they have 16, what I'm saying is they have 16 units at the ready.
Right now, we're not charging 16 minimums, we would be charging one minimum.
Because they have one meter, one big meter.
Do you really seriously think that we're charging them a minimum?
Well, we're not,
Oh.
because, and I think,
To me, the harder question is what happens to the owner who's in Florida for 8 months.
Yeah.
And if they're dividing it up equally, I mean,
Yeah.
how do they know how much water they're using? So they're gonna get charged more than the guy that's there all the time using the water,
Yeah.
with his 3 kids that are living there too,
Yeah.
and using lots of water. So I don't know how the
and that, to me, is
condo
like
place figures it out. but-
up to the association,
Exactly.
it's up to the landlord,
Right.
and I want nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
Exactly so.
Yeah, so I'm a little less inclined to move to a user fee when you're already charging them for their
Their use.
water use by water
Yeah.
usage.
We have, in the instance of this particular
But-
building, examined their water use in the past, and it turns out they happen to collectively be paying something at or above what a minimum charge per unit would have been. So it seems as though they're being equitably charged.
Okay.
uh, I think that in a vacuum, I would be more willing to consider this, but with the idea that we're gonna potentially charge a connection fee based on tap size, I think that works really nicely with the way we charge, then continue to charge the building based on the water flow through that tap. And we leave it up to the landlord to figure out how to divide it up, right?
Right.
And not us. What was I just gonna say? And there's also a difference if you are renting an apartment, right? Versus owning a condo, what your real, I'm hooked to the sewer benefit is, right? You wanna pay what you're paying for, and you could care, right?
That's
Which it might be different if it was a condo and there's certain value to the property and the condo for that connection and part of it.
How many towns have sewer user fees besides Greenwich, I guess?
Well, there's a lot of towns with sewer user fees.
Oh, there are.
But this nuance of a question is, we basically apply our minimum effectively to each tap right now,
Yes.
and not to each dwelling unit or commercial entity that may be served by that one tap.
Well, then what I think what Bob would like to do is at least show that we break even. So if there were 16 units and the minimum charge was, let's say, $200, we should at least see $3,200 worth of charges
Out of that building.
out of that building, or the higher usage, whichever number is higher.
Yes. So, in many cases, the suggestion is that usage would come back higher, and we're not necessarily even gonna end up charging this minimum.
And you would hope that would be the case so that we wouldn't have to venture into that. But obviously, there's,
But
Bob believes that there's opportunities out there that's not happening.
But my concern is, you know, how much hassle are we creating for how much missing revenue we have, you know, like, so they use, you know, $2,800 worth of water, and then we say, you were a little low, so we're charging the minimum is $3,200. You know, we'll collect that $400 after tracking that if there's 16 units in that building, we've documented it, we've, you know, blah, blah, blah. And
I mean,
they've already sub-metered out.
how many places like that are there in Darien?
Yeah.
It's not like the Stanford, we're not dealing with
Yeah.
the
Well, there are more
metropolis.
coming.
It's- how
Yeah,
many-
there are
How
more
many
coming.
here?
As
And you had
Our
previously brought up,
chairman mentioned.
again, the assisted living facility,
Yes.
which in that example was an interesting one, because again, they come online, their sewer user fee is based on the water flow from last year, it's like nothing, so they paid $240 for their first year open. And their second year open, they're only half full.
But
so
we
they're
asked them
making-
to do it month by month.
We did.
Right?
We asked them to do it monthly, so we
So
graduated it up.
So we,
Yeah.
I thought we
Covered that.
we made a better system.
Okay.
Better mousetrap.
And I look at that and I think, again, the connection fee captures a little bit of that startup.
Yes, I'm just
disparity.
trying to be fair, what I think is
Yeah.
fair and equitable. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to overcharge anyone, but like I said, if someone has a house and the house is sitting empty for the year, they're still paying the minimum. You happen to be an apartment owner, or apartment building owner, and you have 16 apartments in there, I think and none of them are full, I think you still should be paying the 16 times the minimum, because you have 16 units that have the instantaneous ability to use the sewer system. And I think you should be, the 16 minimums is your fair share.
How do you then, if it's a single building, one tap, a bunch of residential apartments, and a bunch of varied commercial users?
I haven't thought of that one yet.
I think you need to treat that whole property as commercial and charge them the full thing for the full year.
Yeah, yeah, so whatever, but that goes back to your full use for the full year. And, because they're likely to sub-meter out the irrigation anyway.
Yeah.
But, you're not gonna add up 30 different tenants and this and that and the other to see what a minimum charge would be if you were treating everybody individually.
We would if you directed us to, we
Yeah.
would. But I go back to my original question. How many buildings like that are going to be in Darien?
Well,
Is there 5 or is there 100?
the answer is not a lot. Not a lot, and it's not a lot, and that works both ways. It's not a lot, so we shouldn't spend a lot of time trying to make perfect out of good.
Mhm.
And it's not a lot that if we wanted to do it, it's not a management issue.
Yeah.
So not a lot works in both directions.
But now, are we going to be adding more of these type of buildings in Darien?
Well, it's not,
I mean,
it's
I'm
not
not-
cast,
I
it's
don't
not
know.
cast in stone, I mean, it can be changed.
I mean,
It seems to be going in that direction.
Well, yeah.
Well, but,
And, there
But you
could,
could
there could
change
be
it.
smaller ones like Grove Street and.
There could
And 1020 and things like that aren't these monster developments.
So how hard would it be if you came up with a user fee to just compute the two
So
numbers? and
if you
give
have
them the higher of
X
the
amount
two.
of commercial square feet, you need to pay at least this minimum, and if
And your
you
water
have
usage
a
was
dwelling
X,
unit, you
yeah.
need to pay at least this minimum, and we can
well,
register that.
you're gonna
I
face
guess it's not
that
that
with,
No, it isn't.
the two
Yeah, if you do
shopping
it by,
centers.
if you do the
that-
commercial by
Nothing on
square
here.
foot,
Page 10
that's,
of 10. We didn't speak to them directly, but you can see the wording verbatim
Bethel.
is per unit served. Doesn't say per house or dwelling.
Per unit?
But that's a connection fee,
Yeah,
not a user
User.
charge.
I don't, if we came up with, I don't know how you come up with what your user fee is going to be, or is that your minimum fee? Is
That
what
would,
you're
that
thinking?
would, that would be,
Yeah.
for a dwelling unit, it
For
would be
the-
the minimum fee. What do we do with commercial? So let's say a commercial user currently in our current regs, doesn't use any water. What do we charge them?
We go and check and make sure the building is still there.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen. They use.
Well, like, let's say a commercial building
Yeah.
was vacant for a year with no tenant, and, or
They-
a
they
very
would get-
little amount of water was
They would
used.
get the minimum fee
They would get a minimum fee.
for the one tap. That's-
For a
that's
tap.
That's the only thing we have in place to charge them with.
Yeah, regardless of the size of that commercial user, they would
Yeah.
get the minimum fee.
So then I could see going to, you have to pay the higher of whichever one it is. If
Yeah.
you have a minimum user fee times the number of dwelling units,
Yeah.
or whatever it is based on your water usage,
Yeah.
you pay the higher of those two numbers.
Yeah.
I could go with that.
Dwelling units plus commercial floor area.
Floor area, right.
And we'd have to come up with some kind of math on floor area.
I believe there's probably math you could copy.
Well, something like that.
I think I saw some math.
Whatever, but maybe.
yeah, because the odds are you're not the building is gonna be, once you calculate it, it's just gonna be that again and again. The odds are you're not gonna have to go there and recalculate it every year.
But now, So if we set, so currently, our minimum charge for commercial users is the same as our minimum charge for everybody. One property, one tap, one minimum charge. Whether it's going to Whole Foods or Darien Book Aid, they pay a minimum fee. Now, Whole Foods is always going to use water. So
Yeah,
we have a-
But the minimum charge for the Cape Cod down here on West Avenue and the $5 million home up on Mansfield, still minimum, $237.
So,
Assuming they're both gone,
what-
not living here anymore.
It went away
There's
from
something,
me.
but there's something that's not fair about that, right? There's something,
Well, no, if they're not using water,
Right.
then they're paying the minimum.
yeah, but they represent a
It's the membership fee for the
tremendous
year.
use. So in terms of I can turn my water tap on like that, they have a big use to turn on versus someone that will never turn on a use that's nearly that, right? And so
But
why
they're
is the
gonna
minimum
pay for
charge?
that use. When they turn it
Yeah.
on, they will pay for it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so charge the minimum per unit.
yeah.
I do like, I could get behind that.
Okay, so what if it is now a multi-tenanted commercial building? Are we just charging each tap the minimum? Or do we have to count the number of separate
Dwelling
tenants?
units, and I don't know how you do the commercial, but I do
Commercial.
believe there's going to be something somewhere where you're going to see a.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a perfect system, but I just think it'll be better than what's in place now. I don't, and I can't see it being perfect, because, you know, one minute you're thinking of a big building, so you wanna have a reasonable square footage, and then you're gonna be applying that to a, you know, a much smaller building where the square footage, you might think they're getting a deal, but it is what it is. You have to, you can't micromanage, but managing some, I think, makes it more fair and equitable. You're never gonna get a perfect system, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
But I think you need to pay for the ability to use the system whether or not you use it or not.
And I think that, you know, one tap, one fee already does that. And then if you know, all the apartments and all the commercial spaces are empty and they have to pay a minimum, that's it. And then when they start filling up, they're gonna pay more. So, I don't know,
So you're saying pay in the upfront?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I am more inclined to support a connection fee and less inclined to modify the way we do the minimum charge. So that's kind of where I'm
Well,
standing today.
to me, that's like when you have a sewer connection fee, so you're gonna pay the $35,000 today instead of over the next 30 years. So is that fair for the property owner today? And let's be honest, if we're going with those kind of numbers, what kind of pushback are we gonna get?
Well,
So you have to look realistic.
but if you charge them that today, right? I mean, you have to also think about the accounting system. I mean, that becomes the cost, goes into the cost of the property, and that's amortized over some period of time.
I think
But that would only
it's
be if
not
they own it for that period of
necessarily.
time.
Well, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, because, you know, when they sell the building, it's just like when you buy a house, right? You know, the new owner doesn't pay for the, you know, what you owe on the water bill. The new owner gets a new zero balance on the water bill, right?
Yes.
And you pay, so when a building owner sells a building, right? He's gonna charge or he may not see it, but he will charge the new owner the amount that he has recouped in a commercial situation.
I'm gonna separate my opinions again. I don't think one really has to do with each other. I think that
I agree.
our system is good enough
Right.
now, and it's not, to me, gonna get markedly better to change the way that we're doing it.
Right.
That's kind of where I am on a number 5. But I think the decision we want to make tonight is whether we continue to consider a modification in our sewer user fee and how it is applied on the minimum side, or whether we should
For
stop considering it.
for apartments, condos,
Why can't we see some real numbers on this? And then,
So you want to continue considering
I'd like
it?
to consider, yeah, continue to consider it. Let's take Leroy West and say, okay, if we charge them the minimum times 16, is that the same or less than what they're gonna pay based on their water
Well,
usage?
so that's an interesting one, because currently it's not very occupied, right? So they're probably not,
Let's just
using
look
a
at
lot
it.
of water.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
look at it. Let's look at it at these different existing
So what-
multifamily.
so if we can consider examples of users,
Mhm.
which ones, let's pick 3, right? And these guys can get the numbers.
Well, the only think of offhand is Leroy West. So where else do we have? Avalon is different.
Avalon
Avalon's
pays.
private.
Yeah, they have, every townhouse has a tap.
Yes, is
Yeah.
tap.
Yeah.
They pay us and they
So-
charge their tenants.
Where else do we have multifamily dwelling units?
There's the
Mr.
assisted
Hill
living facility.
brought up
Assisted living facility.
Atria?
condos over on Wilkins
Atria,
Highway North,
Maplewood, LCD.
right?
There we go.
Oakland
Let's do
Highway
those.
North.
Four
Isn't that the one that you were always talking about?
No, the one I'm talking about is the one I'm calling it
I know you're
Pemberton
Pemberton.
16, she's calling it West
I
Leroy.
call it Leroy West.
Pemberton, right?
Yes,
Okay, so I know you talked about that one, but I thought you also talked about the condos over by the ice rink, or?
no, I don't know how
Oh,
they're
okay,
done.
me either. I thought you brought it up,
No.
sorry.
But there's another, but, okay, what
We
about?
mentioned the assisted living facilities, Maplewood,
Atria,
Atria,
Maplewood.
LCB.
Was it Atria, you said?
On Ledge Road?
Atria on Ledge
Maplewood.
Road.
Yeah, I would
Maplewood
too.
on Post Road. LCB on Park.
And the,
Maplewood,
and,
Pemberton.
and the
I
condos.
can't hear him, he's got his fingers.
There's several, Cedric.
So I got Leroy West. Leroy West, we got one there.
Atria on
Atria, on Ledge Road. What was the
Maplewood.
third one?
Atria.
Maplewood.
Maplewood.
At the corner of
599
Brookside
Post,
and
599 Post Road.
And then there's
Go there.
also the condos
Yes.
near the ice rink. And
Pine
I think if
something or
they're,
other.
I'm guessing if they're
Condos where?
townhouse.
The ones you were
like,
Got
talking
their
about,
own,
the-
they have their own
Well, then they
meter.
don't
The
qualify.
Pine,
They
I
have
can't
one
think of
Yeah,
the
they,
name,
they
it's
have their own
Pine
tax.
something.
And so,
Well, let's do those 3 and see how that comes out.
How about the old town hall homes? The old building before
I
you knock
think
it
that would
down.
be really hard to do because they had nobody there. I mean, I don't know where
well,
you,
you
how
could
far you're
take,
gonna go
you
back.
could take one building at the Heights, the other housing authority property, right? Because you have 4 units in a building, and you could just test one.
There you go, test one of those.
You're talking about Alan O'Neill?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alan O'Neill.
We're just gonna throw names
Why do they have
around
to
here.
keep changing these names?
All right, so
Okay,
the.
we got it. More information.
More
numbers.
information.
More information.
We'll continue the discussion.
all right.
Flag ordinance, item number 6, potential code change. The latest version isn't in here. You would have assumed
I
that I
have
brought
a-
my old one, which
I have
I
a
didn't.
gazillion little nits on this one.
Okay,
Because there's a lot of times where the
It's in
letter
my
I,
I
at
left
the
it
beginning of a
outside by
word,
accident.
is capitalized for no reason whatsoever.
oh,
And I think at the very beginning,
capitalize.
I believe at the very top.
All the time.
This is section 1000-15, because 1000-12 is, I printed out the regulations.
oh, okay.
It's something completely different. So I think at the very top, that needs to be 15. 12 is,
All right, I didn't catch that.
but I have nothing,
It's 15 throughout the whole document.
yeah, it's
Okay.
just, it's
I didn't
just
fix
12
that
up here.
piece? Okay.
And I got confused.
May I take a look at that again?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I just have lots of places where I made a capital I into a lowercase.
I had a little question.
I didn't do my homework.
Go, take a look at,
I read it.
below now, therefore be it ordained by the town of Darien, that Article 11 be amended, how about appended,
Yeah, you're right, because there is no
to
1015.
Articles 1 through,
Oh, you're creating them, so
You're
it's
creating
called
a new one.
appended? Okay.
through, is it through 10? And in other words, it should be 10 instead of 11?
Currently, it goes through 14, and
Well-
you're adding 15.
Not the articles.
Article be
Sections.
appended to Articles 1 through what?
It should be 11.
11? But so you're going to append Article 11 to Article 11?
I wanted to amend it, you wanted to append it.
Oh, okay, so is that the difference? Then amended is what you wanted to
This is
do?
the correct word.
Engineer,
I mean,
English
is that all
major,
right?
that
I mean,
working for me.
Is that what you're doing?
That's what I,
Yeah.
that's what I intended it to mean.
Okay,
That
well
we're
then amended
amending
is
the-
fine. Then amended is fine, right?
Amending him by appending.
Well,
This new
Yes.
1000-15.
I'm gonna amend
so you're gonna amend.
Article 11 by
and appending.
pending
Yes.
Section 15.
That's correct, that's what you're doing.
There we go.
So we need to change that. Be it appended or.
I'm sorry, I left mine outside, but, I think I left it outside. But I was, at the when you got into section 1,000 at the very end, it was stating that the maximum fine per day is $100.
Yes.
So that would have to be changed, correct?
That's why I added it and clipped it and added it to the end, because I wanted you to see what they tell, what it says for penalties. And I highlighted the portion of 15-13 to show you what what I thought should be penalties, and now you had a comparison.
Because it could be more, I mean, it's saying $250 a day for the major ones and $100 for the minor ones, but you could have more than one major running concurrently and in a minor, so your penalties could be conceivably more than $100 per day, so you would need to change the section 1,000, correct?
That
And
would
you'd
be
also
correct.
need, I would think you'd need to add that line there about basically each occurrence each day constitutes a new occurrence.
So my question to you then, let's take a step back from the penalty part of it is, they define majors and minor violations. Do you feel they need to be broken up that way? Or can we just make any violation a major violation, or a minor, it doesn't matter, just call it a violation anyway. And then stick with the $100 a day penalty. And then I don't have to change or propose a change in the existing ordinance, and we could modify the highlighted section. That was another choice.
I would say no, because I thought that the major violations were major violations
Yeah.
and constituted more than $100 per day reasonable fine, shall I,
Oh.
for lack of better language, sorry.
Flip it over.
Yeah,
And
I'm
I
looking
thought
for the
that,
definition of
I
major.
thought that
It's
the
right
major
there.
ones
Go on.
deserved the $250 a day,
Okay.
Yeah, that, I agree. The other.
because
yeah,
they were
fine.
egregious, I thought.
Plus, wasn't it 3 minors equal a major? Yeah, I thought that, you'll have to rewrite all of that. And I thought it was well done.
Again, I'll have to kind of lead you to it. You were talking somewhere about where you as the superintendent could ask them to have a sample tested. My personal opinion is you would need to say something more that you could direct them to get a testing company to come in there and get a representative sample. I don't believe that they should be doing their own sampling. If the situation is such that you believe that,
Okay.
their
Independently verified.
their effluent basically needs to be tested, I believe that you need to have someone come in and, a professional come in and,
Third party.
So
Yes.
section 15-7.
okay.
B is the part where, when directed by the superintendent of sewer services, the FPE owner-operator shall have an analysis performed of the discharge sample, and results shall be submitted to the superintendent of services for review. Is that the section?
Yeah, and I would say an authorized testing agency and a representative sample are key words.
Are there people that do this?
Yes.
I mean,
Sampling and testing?
Yeah. lab-
So you want me to put in there something that says it needs to be done by a qualified professional?
And it needs to be,
Yeah.
like I
Chain of
said,
com-
to
you
me,
know,
the
chain
term
of
is
custody should be
representative,
followed, things like
a
that.
representative sample. It doesn't mean that they're gonna go in there at, when no water is flowing in the building or trickling out, and you're taking it then. You need to take a couple different samples and actually see what they're producing.
Well, I mean, essentially you're calibrating.
Well, you're testing to see if
Yeah,
their,
well, that's
if their grease,
calibration, isn't it?
if their grease recovery system is
Yeah.
working.
It's working.
So you're calibrating.
All right.
Okay.
Because, I mean, they're, you know. you'll
I mean,
find-
does that
you'll
seem
find
reasonable
labs
that,
No, you
to
know
not
what?
have
It's-
them take their own sample?
I always like to trust people.
But
Not so
they
much.
they may not even know how to take the sample.
And
I mean, as someone who has been taking classes and how to sample, I mean, I've seen people that have been in my industry for years who do not take representative samples.
Bob, I have no problem with anything you suggested for that section, at all.
So it's certified.
So just somebody that's certified that with, I'll even put in there, with the approval of the sewer superintendent, for that company to be used before they do it.
My question is this, clearly, we are going to have people with, and property owners and businesses with violations.
Sure.
Could be a tenant, not the property owner. And then we're basically tagging the property owner and bringing them in.
We're making him responsible, yeah.
Could be protracted, could take a while to work out through no fault of the property owner, dealing with tenant, whatever. We could imagine many different situations, and we'll fall short of the situations that we're gonna hear. So when we calculate out a violation fee, we're gonna come up with, well, that's $37,625 that you're being assessed because it was in violation for 97 days, and we consider it a major bubble, whatever it is. And they're gonna come to us.
Because they can.
And because they can, and appeal your calculation.
Correct.
And we're gonna be sitting here,
I have
Well,
a pen,
I mean,
I have a calculator, I'm good to go.
with some, I
But-
run a small business, I happen to have a violator, you charge me $37,000, I'm bankrupt, period. End of story. Whatever it is.
But your negligence might have caused $300,000 of damage downstream.
And
So I don't feel the pity.
I think you're gonna run into.
I've dealt with grease balls that were bigger than your head.
Grease balls.
Well, I mean, let's go back.
Ed wants to say something, I'd like to hear it.
Let's go back to the owner-tenant situation. Assuming the owner has a lawyer, the lawyer will take care of putting, or sub-assigning to the tenant these costs, if he is a good lawyer, if the lawyer knows about it, if the owner knows about it, right? So, have to make sure that, when you do this, that the owners are notified that here it is. You better protect yourself, or perhaps even get insurance.
Do we have a list of, insurance is good, the number of properties that have fogs right now?
I think we do. I think Anthony told me there's 60 or 70 of the units.
Sounds like a reasonable number.
Yeah. I'd like to say something now.
Please.
Yes, you are going to run into these situations. They are going to come and they are going to stand at that podium and they're going to plead their case. Hopefully it'll be the owner and the restaurateur or the people running the facility, the rentor, if you will. And you may see it as something that you could alleviate their pain and remove the fine if you feel it's justified or not. But it'll be a way to record and in future issues, and we may have future issues down the line or close to this location where I have grease issues in the pipe, or I'm cleaning it often, or I'm having problems with the pump stations down there. It'll be a good way for us to track and for you folks to understand that, we are having problems and we're dealing with them on a daily basis.
There's 13 fogs upstream of this clog point, and based on the last inspection, 3 of them were in violation and we had a clog that cost us $27,000 in overtime.
Sure.
There's a
That's,
realistic situation.
that's realistic. And we had one vac out there for 2 nights in a row from midnight to 4 and, you know, routing the pipe with a root cutter and, you know, and then we ran the camera through and, yeah, we got it all nice and clean again. But
And then,
here's
and
the
then
bill for $15,000.
I gotta keep my mouth shut.
But you know what, this is not an easy ordinance. to roll out.
Not a usual circumstance. So, I think the consensus of the group is, we think fog regulation is a great idea. We think that this is a huge potential for, and does cause maintenance and damage to our system. And that if everybody was doing what they were supposed to be, that maintenance and damage would be less. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're abusing the system that we're providing for them, and they should pay for it. Is that a fair consensus of
That's right.
where we're at?
Yes.
Yeah.
Craig, I got one question, I'm sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you. You had mentioned something about giving them a timely, I had 10 days in here. Were you thinking that it should be a little bit longer to give them a chance to rectify whatever the issue is?
I saw the 10 days.
I thought it was,
I was
Thought it was reasonable.
10 business days, 2 weeks, right?
Or you thought it was a little like,
I thought it was
Come
a
on.
little shy. You know, if you had said.
again, it depends on the thing.
Can you make
Right,
it
like,
15 days?
It is, have you had it cleaned out?
Yeah.
Like, you should be able to get that thing cleaned out in 3 days. Versus, we notice the system's not even installed, or it's not functioning. And it's gonna take time to get the quote and get the contractor and get it in, you know, like, so again, it depends, right, what's reasonable. And I'm not looking forward to being judge and jury on the appeals of what is reasonable.
How about a reasonable request for an extension? I could put that in here if they felt that, hey, I can't get something in.
That's a good idea.
So it's
I like
10
that idea.
days for something as simple as pumping it out, but, you know, he comes
You
to
have
us and
10
says,
days
hey,
to
I can't get
comply
it.
unless an extension is approved by the superintendent. Can't be us because we only meet once a month.
Aren't these required by the building department?
They're required by state
D-
building code and DEP.
So isn't the Darien Building Department requiring then that these be put in? I know on planning and zoning, we
Yeah.
required them to be
Yeah, I mean,
a
everybody
part
is,
of an application.
everybody is, I mean, I am aware of no situation where we don't have one that's supposed to
Okay,
be there.
all right.
I-
You're making me a little
Yeah,
worried
yeah,
here. We tell them they have to do it
But
and
you-
they
well, you
don't.
know,
And
it
so
could
who's
be
letting
that
them off the
it
hook?
was could it be that it was under appliance version, not an in-the-ground version, and it was removed? It's not there.
So that's a violation.
It is a violation.
And they need to fix that.
I understand.
And they need to be charged for the grease balls.
Anyway, or if it's a reasonable situation, they can ask the superintendent for an extension
Right.
before fines are levied.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the question is, should we put this in the, continue discussion? Kind of put it in the bucket of code changes that we're considering? Or should we advance this independently sooner to a public hearing?
Well,
No,
after
I
the
think-
changes are made, I would like to see one more
Let me
vote.
tidy this up and do a
All right.
little bit more, and then,
So we're gonna further discussion at the next hearing based
yeah,
on changes.
right.
I think
Sounds
Reese
good.
should have a shot at all, thank you, at all 3 of these.
By the
Okay.
way,
I hate to even
like
ask
your-
this one, but I'll ask it real quick. All right, so this is grease. The other issue is rags.
Or what?
No, and I wanna do this really quick. No, seriously. 1 minute.
Do you have to leave at a certain time?
1 minute, just 1 minute answer. And there would be 3 places that I would think wipes get used a boatload. Is there any?
You didn't wanna go with a buttload? I'm sorry.
Assisted living
I didn't even
facilities.
think that.
How about
Wow.
assisted living
You-
facilities, nurseries?
You wouldn't be surprised. And you know that things that people put in their toilets in their houses are insane.
Yes. I'm well aware of that. I'm just asking, especially since Parklands, they put in a pump station. My question was that to them was, is there a comminutor there? And is there any inspection plan to make sure that the thing
It's
is?
their pump station.
We don't have any written down legal right to go over there and inspect their pump station.
Okay.
Because we feel. and
Okay.
I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying, I can't go, I'm here to inspect your pump station. You know, we have some feelings that there's stuff in there that shouldn't be in there, and we're gonna
Okay,
check
I
it.
was, I was just trying,
I
that's
would, in
part of what I
in
was trying to
in a-
figure
in a-
out
In
here.
an optimistic way, you would assume that people that abuse the sewers would cause backups in the building and on the property. And any company that run facilities like this for any period of time would have certain protocol for employees to follow. But it's not up to us to micromanage, I guess is what Ed's saying.
no, I'm not worried about their building.
Oh, okay.
I'm worried about our system after
Yeah,
they
yeah,
build
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm just,
Yeah.
I was just asking the question. Seriously, let's just move on. It was
Okay,
just, it was
so, all
more
right,
of
so
an
we'll continue to
exploratory,
consider
it was
the,
more of an
fog
exploratory question.
ordinance.
And just so you
Item-
know, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I have protected our system with whatever I could do to handle those things.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And I've also seen them go right through comminutors and
Item
just
number-
like they were squeezed.
So,
The water off for a
6
second.
is tabled for further discussion at the next meeting. 7, 17 Freight Court, any update?
We had contact with their surveyor and their lawyer. They asked to stay on the agenda in case they would appear with some information. They obviously did not,
Okay.
nothing further.
But it sounds like they're trying to get to a point where she's gonna have a legitimate
We-
easement and so.
We have every reason to believe that they're actively pursuing
Yep.
this by the fact that their surveyor has come to our counter a couple times, their
Got it.
lawyer has called us a couple of times.
Great. Number 8, anything to do on the Davis Lane service?
Nothing to do. We wrote a letter, as the commission asked. We gave them the revised number, I believe it was $60,000, and it did not seem to scare the head of the association there.
Huh.
But we haven't heard anything from them
Okay,
beyond that.
okay, thank you. Item number 9, superintendent's report.
Okay, I&I study well drilling went well. Both locations were good locations. We have one monitoring well for seasonal, or for groundwater at the police station, right up against the property for the library in the grassed area.
Good location, nice and low.
Yeah, we got a good shot there, we got some water in it too. I think it was down 12 feet, 12 or 13 feet there.
Yeah,
They
there
were-
was, I remember that basement for the library.
The other one is up at the corner of Buttonwood and Brookside,
Okay, I know that one.
the grassed area there, and they went down, I think, about 12 to 13 feet, but they hit water at 5 or 6 feet. Then popped a manhole in the street, and that manhole is down about 7, 8 feet to invert. So we're gonna get some good readings up there too.
Okay.
So that went well. You got B? Mr. Darren?
Oh,
Back up to the I&I study before we go to B.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's another one.
I will state the obvious, which it's been unusually dry for the last 2 months. So
Had to start watering.
when you, I guess when Arcadis talks about the best time to initiate monitoring, they will take that into account.
I agree with you.
Yep.
If the fall isn't the
Right
perfect
time, it's
for
not
it,
the
we're
right
not
time.
gonna do it.
Yep.
But double-edged sword here. If we get more water, it's going in our sewer and it's over in Stanford. We get this dry period, we can't do our testing and we can't determine where all that water's coming in from. So I'm torn right now to whether we get more rain or not.
To me, weather conditions would have to change to think that we should start sooner. You know, I think, anyway, I'll defer to our consultants.
There's other stuff we can be doing too.
But it's
And we
not
have the
raining.
kickoff meeting on the 9th, and the 4 of you are invited. I invited Craig, but you're all welcome to sit in. It's the kickoff meeting we're having on the 9th here. So,
It starts at what time?
10 o'clock,
And
room
and
213.
I don't want more than 2 people to show up from the commission, because I don't want it to be a meeting.
You're not gonna take minutes?
So, the first come, first serve, the first 2 that get there can stay, and the third person's gotta go.
I cannot be there. I already have something scheduled, so
Um,
you can count me out.
I can't go either. I'll be in court.
So I don't think we have a problem.
I wanna, not exert my influence, which I have a tendency to do when I'm in a room with a mouth.
With a group of engineers, you mean?
Yeah, I gotta
Yeah.
try to keep my mouth shut, but, all right,
Okay.
B, sorry, 9B.
The sewer, I'm sorry, sewer TV and cleaning is gonna start tonight. We expect
cool.
it to be finished by the end of the week. I think we reported last week, we hired National Water Main Cleaning Company. So, we'll see what we find on the Post Road corridor.
Can I ask what their per foot charge is gonna be? Do we know?
The purpose?
The per foot cost?
Per foot, $5 and change for TV and cleaning, and if we have to do mechanical cleaning, that's about $6 a foot. The prices are tiered based on the diameter of the pipe, but those are good rough numbers.
Okay,
So if we have to go back and root cut, that's mechanical.
yep,
Jet rod and TV, that's one price,
got it.
and the root cutting's another.
C,
Seagate Pump Station.
Yep.
Generator's installed, up and running, the new generator. We did that 2 weeks ago. We are still waiting, but I understand we're ever so close to that easement from the YMCA. And as soon as that comes in, we're gonna start, we've already ordered the other material and stuff already. Cabinets, the interconnect. Transfer switch, we got it all. It's either on its way or it's here already.
Thank you.
How's the 2 new, crossings, the pumps, the,
Meters.
flow meter's been working?
So far, so
No
good.
news, good news?
I just keeping an eye on it.
We're getting great data on a dry period,
Right.
so we'll be able to compare that to a wet period.
We should be able to see the spike real easy, if there is one, if there is
That's what we're
one.
being charged on, that's good.
I got 2 additional items, just to keep you updated really
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead.
Dewatering, we had a request from, is it Federal?
No.
Realty's project?
Yes,
Palmer's, the Roten Heights Shopping Center is your request. I know
somebody
very,
on Heights.
Okay.
it's,
I
I
don't
know
know.
for a fact.
It's
that
not you.
Not us.
Okay, so it's Palmer's?
So Palmer's had requested, just want to let you guys know, we're going through that process right now. We're permitting them, and we'll have to meter the flows out of the frac tank into the sewer.
Sanitary sewer?
Has to go to the sanitary.
Okay.
You
They
say they're
they needed Stanford permission,
they're
and
dewatering,
then they needed our permit and permission, and then meter. Yes, for dewatering,
like, how?
out of the ground.
They
Well, I
dig a
mean-
big hole to put a foundation in, there's water coming in the
Oh.
hole, they have to evacuate that
Okay,
water.
well, I was just wondering whether that was like well pointing.
Yes.
Yes.
Very similar.
Well,
Yes, could be well points as one means of dewatering.
We had that problem over at General Foods Research Center when we built that. And we got people in, they were pumping and pumping. We couldn't understand where it was coming from.
Yeah.
Across the street was a automobile operation, you know, a showroom. Behind that was a lake. And we were pumping out the lake.
That's never good, is it?
I don't think there's.
So
any
anyway-
Do it,
ground
you know,
problems.
otherwise.
Depending on what's in the water that you are dewatering,
Hmm.
you could choose to treat it yourself and discharge it to storm.
Mhm.
Or you could choose to treat it and discharge it to sewer based on the constituents and your level of desire to deal with the.
But you have to find out,
testing.
right?
Yes,
Have we found out?
they have found
Not
out.
yet.
Not yet.
They're doing their due diligence right now.
To be determined.
And it has to be approved by Stanford, because it's
Yes,
going to there.
whatever it is, Stanford is gonna care what's in it.
Yep.
They already went to Stanford, they already did the testing, and they already got their permit for dewatering from the DEP.
And Darien will be paid for the amount of water that goes into our system.
Correct.
Good.
Final one,
The last item to
Sorry.
follow up on, and I'll leave it to our engineers to follow up on it, which is, confirm the instantaneous rate of pumping isn't a problem for the collection system.
last item.
Mhm.
We have made an offer to a new,
Oh, assistant?
yep.
Cool.
And I understand she has accepted it, and
Yay.
I won't use her name or anything like that, but she is, I was supposed to be starting on the 15th,
Okay,
I believe.
great.
So by our next meeting,
Wonderful.
I'll actually have a name for you.
Glad that process has gone well.
It's got the tough time. Well, with the bills just going out, it's a tough time
Yeah,
to start.
Yeah,
yes,
It's trial by fire.
Yes,
We're,
yes,
That's okay, we're doing that.
yes.
Answering phones today, we all were.
Does,
Mine
Fun
was-
times, fun
does
times.
Is Tamara gonna come over and do any training?
I
Mine-
think Cindy could handle that part, but
Yeah.
we do have, planning and zoning was gracious enough to,
Yeah.
before we transferred Tamara to agree to 1 week of splitting her day
Oh, when that
there
happens.
and half
Oh,
here. So
that's
next
great.
week, Tamara's gonna help out, with us over here.
Okay.
And Jeremy was kind enough to let that happen, so.
Okay.
I wanna thank them both, that they'd be able to help us out.
My bill went up $4.
Yeah, I had
That's
running toilet.
that's gotta be a mistake.
I had no
In my
idea.
boys' bathroom, so I didn't notice it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you don't see me at the podium, I'm paying my bill. Any new business? Hearing none. Item number 11, executive session.
Wait.
Thank-
Oh, wait.
Want me to do it?
He raised his hand. You've got to look up.
I didn't hear
You asked me
anything.
to do the interest thing.
Is there something under superintendent's report you would
Oh,
like to add?
yes, yeah, you ask them that.
Okay.
Might as well.
Is there a motion,
What is the
Wait,
nature of
let
new
me put
business?
my-
nature of the
down so I don't miss
business is
anything.
Or can it
related
wait?
to sewer billing.
Okay,
And we'd like the commission to give us their nod and wink.
okay. So,
Is
I
there a
have a
motion
motion to go into new business to discuss billing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? We are in new business.
Thank you. As Director just mentioned, sewer billing went out. We found out that there may have been an issue with updating property transfers. So there's a number of database connections into the town system. And we have reason to believe that the sewer arm of that may not have been updated. So, for example, if you sold your house in the last year, it's possible that we have mailed the bill to
The right
you,
address with the wrong name or
and the
whatever.
new
Yeah.
person might have said, this isn't mine, and thrown it away.
Yeah.
So what we're asking the commission is for
Reissue
permission
new bills to correct.
and to
Okay.
waive interest fees until we figure out these kinds of little,
Right.
if they arise.
So we're gonna reissue bills
Not
to the
all.
proper, we're gonna reissue for any property that we believe was not updated. We're gonna reissue bills to the correct,
Well,
we don't know the problem yet.
we don't know there's a problem, and we expect them to come to us, and if people don't pay their bill, then
Can't we check
we'll
one?
go looking for them. But there's probably a few where, I can recall one person living in London.
Yeah,
And
the bill doesn't necessarily go to the address.
if that guy sold his house and we're still sending the bill to London, or, if that was his mailing address,
I mean, can we proactively spot check the property transfers for last year to see if,
How many are we talking?
yeah.
100?
That's the problem, we
That's
don't
the
know the
problem, we don't know.
magnitude.
Well, there's how many
But
houses?
I mean, how many are we
can the,
talking
can the
about?
tax, the tax collector, I assume, can run a list of property transfers
Sure.
by a certain date.
Yeah.
And then we can pick 3 on that list in the middle of the period and see whether or not the bill was sent to the right person.
My fear is that there'll be 2 bills out there.
And you don't want to get them paid twice.
So I wanted to get through the first, the 2 months of our quote-unquote appeal period, which would be October and November, everybody appealing their bills. And then check on the magnitude of what you just described, which is give us a list, let's check and see how many there are. Let's see if any of you paid them.
Right.
That's always a good one. And then decide whether we should be reissuing new bills again. That was where I stood.
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
It's nice to be proactive, I'm just afraid I'm gonna have duplicate bills out there.
Yeah,
And I'm
you're
gonna
gonna
have
get 2
either
payments, then
someone
you're
pay
gonna
them
have to
twice.
refund.
Yeah,
That would be-
but, you know, we sent a bill to Johnny Q. Seller that shouldn't have a bill and shouldn't pay that bill. And so waiting to see that it got paid and then checking it off a list and saying, paid, I don't think is the right thing to do.
But he may
because
forward it to the new
He
property.
may, and then the
Right.
guy's like,
That's
why are you
what-
forwarding me a bill that's in your name on it? Blah, 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 blah. I think we need to be upfront, if we need to find out if there's a problem, and if we're upfront, we need to send letters to both people and say, please ignore your bill you got, we sent it to the wrong person, and by the way, send the bill to the person.
I mean, what I think some may happen is you'll get the bill. You'll forward it to the owner that you bought from. They'll look at it, like you said, this is my bill, why am I paying? It sends it back, and the guy pays the bill. Now I've just gone after them and told them they have the wrong bill. I sent them a new one.
Well, but the letter will say, we addressed it to the wrong party, it should be addressed to the current owner. And if they've already forwarded it to the current owner and the current owner paid it, you've explained that in the letter.
But you're gonna narrow the number of letters you need to send if you wait a couple of months and see where you stand.
Yeah, but what if someone who shouldn't have paid a bill, paid a bill? And now the guy that owns the property today didn't get the bill, we send out another bill that, you know, like, you sent me a bill
Alright.
and I don't need to pay it.
Well, question is.
Not my,
And
not
you-
my
And you paid it.
problem, and I paid it.
Question is, what's the
That
magnitude?
could happen. It could happen.
I mean, how many? Can't we?
It's probably a couple hundred, right?
Well, wait a minute, can't
Could be a
we,
couple hundred.
can't we get,
I'm hoping it wasn't that many.
can't we get the town
I
clerk?
keep my
or-
finger on how many there are.
I'm-
Can we just for now have a motion that the commission is okay with us forgiving interest if we
Yes.
do find a problem?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So is that your motion?
I will move that we will agree to waive the interest.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
But.
But do we not want to know the extent?
I would suggest, maybe you ask the tax collector to give you a list. You know.
That's
just-
easy enough.
So then we have
Look, I think.
an idea of whether they're talking about 10 or
110.
100 or 200 or
I
whatever.
think unfortunately, to me, it's very clear. If we made an error that we are now aware of, we need to proactively act expeditiously to correct the error.
Yeah, but the way you act
And
may
it's more
depend
work,
upon.
and that sucks.
But the way you act may depend upon the volume,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you can get a list from the tax assessor, I'd be happy to come in and, I do this all the time, I do data work. I'd be happy to look at your bills and run it. It's 6,600 households, it's not that hard. I used to keep a townwide mailing list. It's just not that gonna be that hard. So, get me
Offer
the.
for assistance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Get me the tax assessor's list and I'll come in.
I mean, it's probably is it computerized?
It is computerized, but apparently the two systems weren't synced.
No, but that's all right, but I mean, it shouldn't be a problem to find out.
If
how
they can
many-
give it to me in Excel,
Right.
I'm golden.
Yeah.
You give it to me in Excel, which I'm sure Tony can do, and you give me your list in Excel of who you sent bills to, and it'll take me half an hour. Because I do it all the time.
Great.
Any further new business? All right. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
I make that motion.
I'll second it. Go ahead.
All those in favor? All right, Channel 79, this means the end of your recording for the evening. When we return to our regular meeting, the only action we will take is adjournment. So,
From
Mr.
you
Cameron
know
won't
who.
mind